Some scenes may not be appropriate for younger audiences. Parental discretion is advised.
Sometimes, two seemingly normal people can come together and commit atrocities that neither may have committed on their own. Couples, friends, or even siblings become rapists, kidnappers, and murderers. In this series, I will be teaming up with my good friend Morgan Robinson. Join us as we look into these toxic pairings to see what happens when people become partners in true crime. Hello, I'm Kimber Bennis. Welcome back to my channel. Murderers are always terrifying, knowing that someone can be out there waiting to hurt you, hunting you like prey. But they always seem even more frightening when they happen close to home. Every city has its own history of true crime, each story more chilling than the last. I'm joined today by Morgan Robinson, and we've decided to cover a vintage case from his neck of the woods, the Moors murders near Manchester, England.
In the early 1960s, 5 children between the ages of 10 and 17 had been reported missing. By the time the police had suspects in custody, 3 of the remains had been found. This series of killings was referred to as the Moors murders because the bodies had been found on the Saddleworth Moor in northwestern England.
The suspects in question were 27-year-old Ian Brady and his 23-year-old girlfriend Myra Hindley. Soon more bodies would be found, and it would come to light that at least 4 of the victims were sexually assaulted, and all were tortured. One of the victims had even been recorded pleading for their life. This led to the couple becoming the most hated people in Britain at the time. The murders were the result of what Malcolm McCulloch, professor of forensic psychiatry at Cardiff University, called a concatenation of circumstances. The trial judge would go on to call the couple 2 sadistic killers of the utmost depravity. But what led to these events? Let's look at the couple's history.
Ian Brady was born in Glasgow in 1938. His mother was a waitress and his father is unknown. Due to financial issues, his mother would soon give her son over to the care of a local couple, Mary and John Sloan, who already had 4 other children who would become Ian Brady's siblings. His biological mother did continue to visit him throughout his childhood.
Several authors had claimed that he tortured animals during his childhood, but Brady himself said that is untrue. He was soon accepted to the Shawlands Academy, a school for above-average pupils, but while he was there, his behavior worsened. He would end up in court twice for breaking and entering, and at 15, he was kicked out of the academy.
Brady did have a girlfriend at the time by the name of Evelyn Grant, but their relationship was short-lived after Brady threatened her with a flick knife for dancing with another boy. He would once again end up in court, this time with 9 charges against him, which led to him being put on probation and forced to move back in with his biological mother, who had moved to Manchester with her new husband, Patrick Brady. Ian would go on to take his stepfather's surname.
Over the next few years, he bounced around correctional facilities, and when he was finally released, he bounced around between crappy jobs. He soon became fixated on bettering himself and spent many hours reading instructional manuals on bookkeeping, which eventually led to him getting a clerical job with a wholesale chemical distribution company called Milford. He also developed an interest in Nazi literature.
Myra Hindley was born in July 1942. She was raised in Gorton in Manchester. During her childhood, her mother, an alcoholic father, beat her regularly. They were so poor that they were forced to all sleep in one room. When Myra's sister was born, she was forced to go and live with her grandparents, who lived nearby. She was 5 years old. Her father had served in the army in World War II and insisted that his daughter be tough. He would teach her how to fight, and one day, after Myra came home crying due to a boy attacking her at school when she was 8, her father got angry and insisted she go back and punch the boy who had attacked her, saying, "If you don't, I'll leather you." She did succeed at beating the boy up, and she would later write, that at 8 years old she had scored her first victory. Forensic psychologists involved with the case think that her father's abuse was a key contributor to her future murderous actions.
In June 1957, one of her closest friends, Michael Higgins, invited her to go swimming, an invite that she declined. He drowned that day, and Myra blamed herself for his untimely death. His death would have a lasting effect on her. She also took martial arts lessons, but her partners were reluctant to train with her due to her aggression on the mat.
Myra and Ian met while working together, and although she continued to date other men, her diary recounts an immediate infatuation with Brady. In 1961, they began dating, frequenting movies together, and often heading back to Myra's afterwards to read and drink wine. Ian began to expose her to Nazi literature, and soon she decided to dye her hair blonde and wear red lipstick to emulate the idea of Aryan beauty.
Once, in a letter to a friend, Myra confessed that Brady had drugged her, but even that wasn't enough to derail her fascination with him. While she showed concern with aspects of his personality, she also admitted she was very much in love with him and would believe anything he said. Around this time, she began wearing sexier clothing, short skirts and high boots with leather jackets, and the two became more reclusive, choosing trips to the library over social gatherings.
They mostly rented books about crime, torture, and philosophy, with a special interest in Friedrich Nietzsche and the Marquis de Sade. They started visiting shooting ranges and even rented a van with which they planned to rob a bank. While the plans for the bank robbery didn't pan out, she did buy 2 guns, a Webley 45 and a Smith & Wesson 38.
The couple also began to experiment with photography, which started out innocently enough, with pictures of themselves and their dog Puppet, but soon moved into a more risque territory with pornographic pictures of each other. It was around this time that Brady started to express a desire to pull off the perfect murder. He drew inspiration from a novel called Compulsion by Meyer Levin. The story followed 2 boys who kill a 12-year-old child and escape the death penalty.
Brady moved in with Myra at her grandmother's house, and in July 1963, they killed their first victim, a 16-year-old girl who attended the same school as Myra's younger sister, Maureen. Her name was Pauline Reed. Pauline had a short-lived relationship with David Smith, Maureen's boyfriend, and he was questioned by police afterwards, but soon released.
Pauline had been sexually assaulted, and her throat was cut with a long knife. The couple's usual MO was using Myra to lure victims under the guise of helping them, and Ian would soon arrive after, and they would kill the victims together. The next person that they murdered was John Kilbride in November 1963. Hindley offered him a ride, and Brady soon showed up, sexually assaulted him, and attempted to slit his throat with a knife. When that didn't work, he eventually strangled him to death. This time there was a huge search with 500 missing people posters and 2,000 volunteers searching nearby derelict buildings. Hindley was known at this time to have driven around the burial sites to make sure that they weren't disturbed.
When 12-year-old Keith Bennett disappeared in June 1964, his stepfather became a suspect. They took him in for questioning 4 times over the next 2 years, and even went as far as to search under the floorboards of his house, but called off the search when they found nothing and realised that all the houses on the row were connected. Many years later, Keith Bennett's mother would write a letter pleading for Hindley and Brady to assist in finding her son's remains. Despite a search with over 100 police officers, he was never found.
In August 1964, Myra's sister Maureen, who was 7 months pregnant at the time, married David Smith. None of her family attended the wedding because the ceremony was rushed and no one really approved of the couple. When Smith met Brady, they hit it off and even talked about robbing a bank together. Also this year, Hindley, Brady, and her grandmother moved to 16 Wardlebrook Avenue, where they befriended an 11-year-old girl, Patricia Hodges. Though the couple spent a lot of time with the girl, she remained unharmed, living too close to the pair to kill for fear of being caught.
They soon abducted and killed a 10-year-old girl, Leslie Ann Downey, but the couple tell two different stories of how things occurred, each claiming the other actually performed the murder. In 1965, Brady met a man named Edward Evans at Manchester Central train station. He got him to relax by offering him wine, but then killed him with an axe. David Smith, who was now Brady's brother-in-law, heard a scream from the other room and responded to Brady's calls for help.
Brady had sprained his ankle in the struggle and needed Smith to help him move the body to another room in the house. Smith did in fact help, but felt horrible about it and soon confessed to his wife and reported it to the police. An officer arrived at their home the next day, and upon searching, he came across a locked door. At first, Hindley denied having a key, but Brady eventually told her to let the cop in, and soon he discovered the freshly dead body and arrested Brady. Hindley was not taken into custody at this time, but insisted on going to the police station where she was questioned and then released. She used her free time to destroy evidence and quit her job. She was arrested 4 days later for accessory to murder.
During questioning, Brady said that the murder was a fight gone wrong, and defended Hindley, saying she only did what she was told. Smith said Brady asked him to get rid of incriminating evidence in suitcases. He said he wasn't sure where they were, but with Smith's help and a left luggage ticket that they found in Myra's prayer book, they were found. One of the suitcases included 9 pornographic photos of an underage girl with a scarf tied around her mouth, and a 16-minute-long tape of her begging for help. Ann West, the mother of the victim, listened to the tape and confirmed that it was the voice of her daughter, 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey.
At this time, more evidence emerged, and it became very clear that Myra Hindley was actively involved with the murder of Edward Evans. While searching the home, the police saw the name John Kilbride scribbled in an old book, which raised their suspicions that the couple may have been involved in multiple murders. When 150 pictures were found, all taken on the moor, they continued to search there for more clues. Patricia Hodges had been taken to the moor many times by Brady and Hindley, and led the officers to a spot that they frequented where they found a bone sticking out of the ground. They first thought that they found the body of John Kilbride, but it turned out to be the remains of Leslie Ann Downey. 5 days later, they also found the badly decomposed corpse of John Kilbride.
The police were now looking at the couple as possible suspects for missing children's cases in Manchester for the last several years. They continued their search, but had to postpone due to winter weather conditions in the area. During the trial, Brady admitted to taking the pictures of Downey, but said that she was brought there by 2 men and left with them alive. In an attempt to date the photos, their dog, Puppet, who appeared in many of them, was brought to a vet to determine its age. The dog would sadly later pass away from complications from the anesthesia during this process. Hindley was furious when she heard the news and accused the police of murdering her dog. This was the one time she exhibited any emotion.
There was a controversy with Smith becoming a star witness for the prosecution. He had agreed to sell his story to a local news publication, and they had already paid for a vacation for him and his wife. Both defendants were called to give evidence for several hours, Brady for 8, Hindley for 6. While Brady did admit to hitting Evans with an axe, Hindley denied everything, even her involvement with the photographs. When questioned about the photos and the recording of the girl screaming, Myra came up with excuses like, "I was looking away," or "I was running a bath."
After 2 hours of deliberation, they were both found guilty. Brady received 3 life sentences. Hindley was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 7 years. Brady was sent to Durham Prison and Hindley to Holloway Prison. 20 years later, while in prison, Brady allegedly confessed to being responsible for the deaths of Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett. Brady and Hindley have both been taken back to the moor to help search for other potential victims, which led to the discovery of the body of Pauline Reed.
Brady spent the rest of his life in prison and in mental institutions. He died of restrictive pulmonary disease at Ashworth Hospital on May 15, 2017. And although he often refused food and water, it was determined that he died of natural causes. Hindley had several failed attempts at appealing her case and applying for parole. In 2002, at 60 years old, she died from bronchial pneumonia. Once again, there's a lot more to this case, so if this got you interested, I encourage you to look into it more. There are tons of articles written about Brady and Hindley, as well as 2 TV movie adaptations, See No Evil, The Moors Murders, and Longford. I'd like to thank Morgan for joining me today, and I'm sure you'll be seeing him again. As always, if you have any ideas for future episodes, please leave a comment below. If you liked what you saw, be sure to like and subscribe. In Morgan's channel, Purple Dawn, is linked in the description below, as well as some great episodes we've done in the past together about spooky stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this very special episode of Horror House. It is our 10th episode. I'm treating this as the first milestone of this podcast, and I'm incredibly excited to talk about today's topic with the only other person on the planet who's a bigger fan of this topic than I am. You know her well. She was our first ever guest on Horror House in episode 4.